What secret will you never tell your parents? Before we start with the first story, please hit a subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Number 10. Pre-cell phone era, I answered the phone and it was my aunt calling from Florida. My parents had planned a long driving trip to see her. She was calling to say that maybe now wasn't a good time to visit. It only took about 30 seconds for it to turn into a rant about not really wanting them in her house, to flat-out insults about every wrong they had ever done to her. When the rant ran out, I said they left an hour ago. My aunt said, "Let's just make this our little secret, okay?" and hung up. Number 9. Had skipped school and the school called my dad to ask why I didn't show up. So he calls me and says, "Why the hell aren't you at school?" So I told him that I'm actually on a field trip and they should know that, and he says, "Oh, let me talk to your teacher." So I was in downtown and there was no shortage of homeless people, so I asked one if he'll pretend to be my teacher for $5. He sold it perfectly and my dad apologized to me. Number 8. I lied when I said they repaid me for half of my sister's wedding dinner. My dad was somewhat forced into early retirement, and while splitting the dinner bill wouldn't change things overall, I did not want him stretching his retirement money to cover something I could afford to pay for in full. Number 7. I burned the house down and not the Christmas tree. I left the lights on without putting water. I was playing with the dog and we knocked over something. A spark was created and then the fire on Christmas Eve. I told my parents it just sparked and started. My parents got a divorce soon after that. Not sure if I caused that too, but life has been shitty since that point. Reply: accidents happen, my guy, don't blame yourself. I'd be willing to guarantee your folks were having issues before the fire too. Number 6. I had a huge problem with alcohol. They might have been suspecting it, but I was always able to control it just when I needed to so they didn't catch on. One night we were in a club and I drank way too much, more than I ever did. So at like 4 a.m. everyone had gone home except for some dudes smoking outside. I went up to them and asked them which way is home. Long story short, I ended up taking a pill with them, which to this day I have no idea what it was. I completely lost track of everything. Next thing I knew, they were also gone and I had no idea where I was. I freaked out. I was already pretty much at my drunk mind, but the hours before were missing. It was dark, and I was in another town as I didn't recognize or anything around me. I've dealt with depression before, but right then and there it hit me so hard I couldn't believe what I was feeling. So I just went on some long road until I saw a truck coming my way. Then I found myself standing in front of it waiting for it to hit me head on. The truck stopped, the guy saw me all along and had just enough time to stop. What I'm sure about is that I wasn't counting for that to happen, but just accepted it. That is very much me in many situations, which are never this drastic oft that I'm convinced I meant it seriously in those moments. So what happened is I walked up to the dude and asked him for directions. Luckily, while lurking around, I was actually making my way back into my town. I still had to walk 2+ hours home, but getting in bed that night/day was the best feeling I'd ever felt. So yeah, I'm not ever telling them this one. Number 5. I wasn't allowed to play violent video games in my father's house for the entirety of the time I lived there due to their religious beliefs, Jehovah's Witnesses. Naturally, I was playing them the entire time, behind his back. I was caught a couple of times, and each time it was such a source of heated argument between my father and I that the last time I was caught, he literally threatened to kick me out over it, verbatim, "Either those games go or you do." He told me he was willing to undergo potential punishment with the church. I will take my lumps for kicking his son on the street. Each time I was caught, my mother would stand by him. What I'll never tell my father is that my mother knew the entire time. The entire time. She thought he was being ridiculous. She told him as much in private. She has confirmed to me, yet he refused to budge. She asked me once, "Do you understand that those games are fiction and not reality?" I answered yes because I had reached the age of reason. She followed up with, "Do you ever want to kill anyone or anything like that?" with a smirk on her face. I answered no, and from that point on it was an unspoken agreement between us. She has flat out told me that it would likely end their marriage. Number 4. I was the primary weed dealer to my college dorms my first 2 years at college. I wasn't selling small quantities. I was buying pounds from connects I got from a shady old hippie dude who hooked me up with connects at the shipping yards and was the supplier for all the dudes who would sell 1/8 and ounces on campus. This was when I was 17 to 19. I was a fucking moron and even started carrying on pickups. My family didn't have a lot of money, and I was paying for a lot myself. It paid tuition, books, housing, and for the best parties and gifts for my then-now wife. I had a coming-to-God moment when I got raided by the police, but with only like a 5-minute head start, because my roommate walked past the police and gave me a heads up. I cleared out what I had on site and ditched my Nextel and notes. I still got booted from campus housing under nuisance complaints, but didn't get arrested. Campus police were a precinct of city police, so it wasn't just security I was dealing with. When that happened, I said I'm good and quit my because I'm smart enough to continue. Number 3. 4 years ago, I put a loaded pistol in my mouth. Was going to end it all, and my dad don't know he saved my life that day. Reply: my son died earlier this year. Self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. We had no notion that he was suicidal. We still have no idea as to the whys of it all. I'm trying to make peace with the idea that I'll never know. One of the hardest parts right now is thinking about my boy going through that much pain and doing it alone. I have spurts of anger that after everything he didn't trust that I could handle it, or sadness that he didn't trust that I could help with anything. I would give anything to be able to figure out a way to make him comfortable enough to just talk to me about his pain. So please, as a father, I would encourage you to talk to your parents about mental health in general. Give them the chance to just be there with you through the dark times. You're loved so f***ing deeply, and it costs nothing to just have a conversation. Please. Number 2. I remember the day you adopted me. I never told them. They gave me all the love that shaped me as a person. Surely they had their reasons, which I will never question, for never saying it during their lives. They passed away several years ago, and I will miss them every single day of my life. Sometimes parents don't need to know any secrets, because there's a good chance they already know or have deduced it long before you've even considered telling them. They love you unconditionally. It is your sole decision to share something with them or not. Number 1. Bye. Realistically, Mom wouldn't care. Even when the discussion of my own child's gender issues came up, she was fine. She's the one that raised me to believe that everyone should be able to live as their own authentic self. Not in those words, but the same idea. The issue is that my father, who has since passed, was also bi and cheated on her, at least once, but probably more than that, with other men. The only person that I've ever told is my husband, and he's totally fine with it. Alright folks, that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us today. If you like more of this, please hit a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your own story or thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. I'll see you in the next video.